All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking Homer's ancient epic, the Iliad. We're going to look way past the Hollywood adaptations and decode the actual historical, structural, and philosophical layers of this massive narrative. Because when you really look at it, it's a profound mirror of both historical geopolitics and human psychology. So think about it. Was the Trojan War actually a brutal, boots-on-the-ground geopolitical conflict? Or is it literally just a story about a glowing golden apple? For centuries, people thought it was entirely fictional, just some fable about gods meddling in human affairs. But to truly grasp the weight of this epic, we really have to ask what was actually driving these ancient warriors to cross the sea and wage a grueling decade-long war.
Here is our agenda for today. 1. The intersection of myth and history. 2. The mindset of ancient Greeks. 3. The dynamics of gods and heroes. And 4. Modern lessons left by tragedy. Okay, Section 1. The intersection of myth and history. Let's zoom out for a second. Why did this massive conflict actually have to happen?
We all know the mythological cost of the war, right? The goddess of discord, Eris, tosses a golden apple, Paris makes his choice, Helen gets abducted, and boom, war. But if we look at the actual history in the late 12th century BC, it's a completely different story. We're talking about a massive clash between Mycenaean kingdoms and Trojan forces. Troy was sitting right on the geopolitical bottleneck of the Hellespont, meaning they controlled all the lucrative trade routes. So this wasn't really about a stolen bride, this was a brutal Bronze Age war for resources and absolute maritime dominance.
And the timeline here is fascinating. The actual Bronze Age conflict happened centuries before the epic was ever written down. After that 12th century BC war, Greece actually plunged into a dark age. So for hundreds of years, you just had oral bards memorizing and chanting these fragmented, heroic memories. It wasn't until the 8th century BC, when the Greek alphabet was finally adopted and those independent city-states, the polis, started forming, that this sprawling epic was actually codified.
Because of that timeline, the text actually captures this massive cultural transition. Take Achilles. He perfectly represents that old-school Bronze Age ideal. You know, the isolated aristocrat who's totally fine letting his allies burn as long as he proves his personal worth. But the 8th century audience who eventually read this, they were shifting into the Iron Age. They were relying on tight-knit phalanx formations where survival literally depended on solidarity and doing your part for the state. The Iliad captures that exact tension between two completely opposing value systems.
Moving on to Section 2, the mindset of ancient Greeks. Let's look at how this historical transition shaped the everyday psychology of these warriors.
To understand why they did what they did, we really have to understand what terrified them. Unlike our modern ideas of some rewarding afterlife, the ancient Greeks looked at Hades with absolute pessimism. When you died, you became this faint phantom just drifting in a dark abyss, period. It didn't matter if you were good or bad in life, there was zero salvation waiting for you. That intense, inescapable dread of the void, that was the psychological engine driving everything they did.
And because of that terrifying view of death, they built their lives around 4 main pillars. First is kleos, this extreme obsession with immortal fame. It was quite literally their only psychological survival mechanism against being forgotten. To get it, you needed arete, meaning supreme courage and excellence in battle. But to keep from becoming complete monsters, they strictly followed xenia, the sacred laws of hospitality, and hikateia, the ritual of begging for mercy. Think about it. If a defeated enemy fell to his knees in supplication, even the most bloodthirsty warrior was spiritually obligated to show mercy.
Now, honor back then wasn't just some invisible, warm feeling of respect. It was deeply material and brutally unequal. Just look at the conversion rates of the era. 1 bronze tripod was worth 12 oxen, but a highly skilled female captive, she was traded for just 4. So when Agamemnon pulls rank and confiscates Achilles' captive, Briseis, he is not just hurting Achilles' feelings. In this society, he is literally physically stripping away Achilles' accumulated worth. That material disrespect is exactly what triggers his catastrophic rage.
All right, Section 3, dynamics of gods and heroes. Now that we've got a handle on their mindset, let's see how they projected all those human flaws right up into the heavens.
The gods in this story are not perfectly moral beings. Honestly, they act more like biased political actors suffering from greed, jealousy, and blatant favoritism, just like the humans down below. You've got Hera, Athena, and Poseidon fiercely backing the Greeks, while Apollo, Aphrodite, and Ares are actively defending the Trojans. And right in the middle is Zeus, just holding the scales of fate. We might look at these gods today and think they're acting pretty petty,
But for the ancient Greeks, explaining the unpredictable, unfair nature of the universe made total sense if the gods had all of our flaws, just with infinite power. We can actually trace the whole catastrophic domino effect of this war right here. It really highlights how personal arrogance and intense emotional grief directly steer the fate of entire nations. It goes like this. Agamemnon's greed insults Achilles, so Achilles goes on strike and withdraws, which nearly gets the Greek army completely slaughtered. It's only when his best friend, Patroclus, borrows his armor and is killed by the Trojan prince Hector that everything shifts. Achilles' wounded pride transforms into this terrifying cosmic grief, and he returns for absolute vengeance.
Before that final battle, though, Hephaestus forges a magnificent shield for Achilles. Homer actually spends over 130 lines describing it, and it's this stunning visual metaphor. It shows a cosmic balance between two cities, a city at war full of ambushes and a city at peace full of weddings and harvests. Around the very edge flows the great river Oceanos. It's Homer's way of reminding us that war is really just a fraction of the human experience. Even amidst all that total destruction, the peaceful, cyclical rhythms of everyday life still endure.
Which brings us to Section 4. Modern lessons left by tragedy. Let's zoom back out and look at the profound philosophical resolution this ancient story actually offers us today. This is the emotional climax of the whole story, the supreme act of hikateia, supplication. Under the cover of darkness, the aging Trojan king, Priam, sneaks into the enemy camp, walks right into Achilles' tent, falls to his knees, and literally kisses the terrible, man-killing hands of the warrior who slaughtered his son. He begs for Hector's body back. And this just breaks Achilles. His monstrous rage melts away, and he weeps. Not just for his own losses, but for his aging father and for the tragic old man crying right in front of him. It is a moment of pure, raw humanity.
You know, the Iliad doesn't actually end with the famous Trojan horse or the burning of the city. It ends with a funeral. It ends with two mortal enemies crying together inside a tent, realizing that while the gods get to live forever, human beings are completely united by suffering, loss, and death. Both the victor and the victim are bound by the exact same tragic human condition. It's just this staggering assertion that empathy and compassion are really the only true victories we can achieve against the horrors of war.
So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. As we navigate our own geopolitical conflicts today, what does our modern shield of Achilles look like? How do we balance the harsh realities of conflict with the absolute necessity of empathy? We still live in a world driven by resource wars, political arrogance, and intense factionalism. But if a grieving father and a raging warrior from the Bronze Age could find a moment of shared humanity in the absolute darkest of times, well, it definitely challenges us to look for the exact same thing in our world today. Thanks for diving into this explainer with me.